Many AEC firms struggle to choose the right size data management or visualization solutions. How do you help clients make that decision, whether internal or external? And what factors do you consider when selecting between tools like Power BI, any reporting platforms, or even more advanced databases?
So you really have to see where, whatever client you're working with, where they are in their data journey. They're just starting out with Excel, and they have all of their, quote unquote databases in Excel, and it lives on people's hard drives, and they really don't know the best way to get all that data into a single source of truth.
Welcome to this episode of the AEC Engineering and Technology Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping engineering professionals find technology that fits their needs. Did you know that nearly 95% of data captured in the AEC industry goes unused? That's right. Most of the data generated by engineering and construction firms never turns into actionable insights, leading to missed opportunities, inefficiencies, and costly delays. In a world where data is one of our most valuable resources, AEC firms can't afford to let it go to waste. But more data isn't always better. What matters is having a right-sized data strategy, one that fits your firm's specific needs without overwhelming your teams or your systems. In this episode, I'm joined by Szalaj, Digital Practice Leader, and Scott Posey, Manager of Enterprise Analytics, both at Stanley Consultants. We'll be speaking about how to deploy practical, scalable data solutions and how tools like Power BI can help uncover hidden insights, improve decision-making, and drive better project outcomes. Whether you're just beginning your data journey or refining your digital strategy, this episode is packed with actionable ideas to help you cut through the noise and focus on what actually drives results. I'm your host, Nick Heim, and this is the AEC Engineering and Technology Podcast. With that, let's jump into today's episode. It's now time for our conversation of the week with Szalaj and Scott Posey. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to join the show and welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Good morning.
Absolutely. And so we're going to, I really, as I was telling you guys, I really love these tandem interviews because it gives you two unique perspectives, coming from the same business instead of just the regular one-on-one interviews. So this will be great. And we'll get kicked off here. So question for both of you guys, Aaron and Scott, to start off, can you each tell us a little bit about your background and how you became involved in data visualization and tools like Power BI?
Sure, I can jump in first. So coming out of college, I started working for AOL in the help desk department, and working in the help desk was fine. It's a way to get your feet wet and everything. But when I kind of got tickets doing data analysis and more business intelligence reporting, that's where I really found my love, and found out there was a business intelligence department at AOL, moved over to that department, and it kind of took off from there. So I started with Tableau, and then moved on to Click, and then eventually now I'm with Power BI. But really it was just, seeing a large set of data and being able to change that into something that the end user could use and, answer questions with that they didn't know in the beginning. So that really jump-started my career, and I was like, I'm going to go down this route from now on.
Yeah, and I guess a little bit about me. I went to University of Denver, got an electrical engineering degree, started doing typical electrical engineering design work. Then realized there's a whole world out there connecting data and instrumentation to the real world. And so I stepped into the control systems and automation side of things, really doing like nuclear design work, things like that, and for the power industry. And since then, this industry has just grown, and the capabilities and the opportunities that we can provide for our clients with collecting data and visualizing it for their operations, utilities, things like that has just been very interesting and exciting. So there's a lot of great opportunities there. And as you can tell, I've got a lot of passion around it. So.
All right. So, it's great to hear about both of you guys' backgrounds, right? Because I think in many engineering firms, they're just not as fortunate to have individuals like, with your backgrounds that can essentially help make informed decisions for the business, even if you are not, in some cases, working on projects, which I think is a good lead into our next question for you, Scott. So many AEC firms struggle to choose the right size data management or visualization solutions. How do you help clients make that decision, whether internal or external? And what factors do you consider when selecting between tools like Power BI, any reporting platforms, or even more advanced databases?
Sure. So this is tricky. It's not a one size fits all. So you really have to see where, whatever client you're working with, where they are in their data journey. You might have a client that they're just starting out with Excel, and they have all of their, quote unquote databases in Excel, and it lives on people's hard drives, and they really don't know the best way to get all that data into a single source of truth. So we'll come in and start small. We'll say, you have your Excel, we can take this, we can clean it up, put it into a single database, a free database that you guys can use. It's a single source of truth, and kind of explain to them, the benefits, the pros and cons, show issues that could come up for having these files on people's desktops. But then you'll find another place that you'll go, and they're well on their journey with Power BI or Click or Tableau. And one of the things that we kind of pride ourselves on is that we can meet them wherever they are. I have people on my team who have worked with every data visualization platform, and honestly, if you know one, you know others, and you can kind of hit the ground running and really take off. So we try to meet people where they are and not force them into uncomfortable situations, because I can come in and say, this is how it's supposed to be done. But as soon as I leave, and if they don't like it, or if they just can't adapt to it, it's just going to be lost. And that was useless work. So I want to make sure that, we meet people where they are in their data journey and kind of help them to the next step, rather than getting them to the finish line before they're ready.
And Scott, that's a great point, because you're talking about a solution that's relatively custom for each client, depending on their specific needs. And I would just assume, right? I mean, sometimes the answer could be Excel, just depending on the specific application, right?
Right. Yep. And it could. I mean, it's not. We might go somewhere and someone might say, we just need this cleaned up, and we just need to be able to see, this data in a clean format, and Excel might be the answer. It might just be something that, we can take what you have now and then create something a little better and combine it into one, so that you're not scrambling last minute when someone's on vacation, it's on their hard drive. Maybe we use SharePoint and we have a centralized location where something's stored. Really, it's getting them to the next step, but that next step might just be the next step in Excel versus a totally new platform that they're not used to.
And it's another good segue to our next question, right? Scott, you mentioned this journey along on the process, and some firms, they're at different points. And Aaron, I think part of that journey does include physical system audits, depending on the specific client, which could include PLCs, SCADA systems, and historians or data lakes. So what should these organizations be looking for, and anything in addition to what I've already listed?
So a really critical part of, either beginning this journey or even understanding where you are in this journey is doing a physical system audit, taking a look at your instrumentation. Are you collecting the right data to start with? Understanding where you're trying to get to with Scott's team and what data you're trying to visualize or what answer you're trying to get. You need to make sure you're even getting the right data in the first place, right? And so taking a look at your system, making sure you're collecting the right data in the right locations, and that the PLCs or SCADA systems are up to date enough to be able to convey the right data as a unit to your historian or data lake, so to speak. That's your, all your shared data that you're collecting from your system. And that's the real world connection. And so it's very critical to spend the time to understand where you are and what data you're collecting and how you're collecting it, making sure that the data is cleansed, and Scott can talk more about that, but even understanding how that data can be sorted and moved through to visualize more easily is very important too. So there's a ground layer of work that needs to be done to set up the base of the pyramid, so that when you do get to that final goal of visualization, that it can be done successfully. So that audit is very critical just for your understanding and how you're going to leverage that data going forward.
And then it sounds like, they're just depending on the specific engineering use case, right? You guys are, going out, collecting some form of data, and then being able to pass it back to, say, Scott and his team.
Correct.
To do any number of things, which, and we'll throw this one back to you, Scott, which could include these blind spots, because you don't really know what you don't know until and part of that is actually like getting your team involved to help organizations view the data. So in your experience, what are some of these common data blind spots, and then how do these visualization tools help bring them to the surface?
Sure. So I spoke previously about the the dreaded Excel file that's on someone's hard drive and they go on vacation, and it's really not having centralized data. That can always be a problem. And if it's something that is really, used monthly, say it's for a board deck, or if it's for some kind of projection that they're doing, if we come in and we don't know about that, and then at the last minute it kind of comes up, that would be like a blind spot that we have learned in the past, that like we should ask this first, and we should see, like, give us all the sources up front so that we can then kind of go from there and build something for you. A lot of times it's just they just don't know where the data is or what's going to be used, or maybe there's just someone at the company who makes this file, and there is another platform out there that has its own database, and they just assume that it comes from this Excel file. It's these assumptions that we kind of come in and go, oh, well, let's understand where it comes from, because we can make a better product for you. We might not even have to use John Doe and his Excel VBA macros that are going to kick off this full process. We'll just go to the source for you. And a lot of times it's getting that up front and making sure that we fully understand it before we start building anything whatsoever.
Which it sounds like is the value in working with a team like yours, whether you're an internal client, Stanley, or an external client that you guys service, because you have that experience. And have you seen, we've seen this common pitfall a dozen times, and we know to ask the question before a project gets kicked off.
Right. Exactly. And it happens more often than I'd like to admit, in the beginning, because then we got to the point where we had to, make it like a checkpoint. Like, we need to make sure we get all of the data up front, because we don't want to be in the situation again where at the 11th hour, here comes this other file that someone found. And it's like, okay, we'll get this up front. We'll interview everyone. We'll make sure we have this done.
And Aaron, speaking of pitfalls, question for you. What are some of the most common pitfalls organizations face when implementing new data tools, and how can they be avoided?
So I think the one that I've seen the most over the years that I've done this is that people think that they can get to the end answer extremely quickly. They don't realize what it takes to get there. And what, like I was talking about previously with that groundwork and understanding your data, knowing what you're collecting, and then what you're aiming for the final result, the answers that Scott and his team can give. But when you're trying to implement something like this, it is a journey, and there's an opportunity to really define the process, but that takes time. And you're not going to be able to turn something around in 2 months, or something like that when you're starting from scratch. You have to have a plan, and getting us involved or others that do this type of work is really critical to put that plan in place so that you can then really digest the data properly, collect it properly. Like, all of these different steps that we've talked about up to this point, it just takes more time. And, planning your capital budget appropriately and giving your management the story that is real versus the pipe dream that it's going to be in place in 6 months or something like that. So I think that's a really critical, pitfall that I've seen a lot of clients fall into, is that they think this is a quick turnaround. It's data. It's all moving fast, right? This is the new age, but there are steps that need to be taken to really do it right.
And I imagine that part of that is going to be integration between different systems, because as much as we'd like every single system we have to talk or interoperate cleanly between one another, right? There's always going to be room for improvement, and that's where teams like Scott's come in. So another one for you, Scott. Can you walk us through how you integrate data from different systems into tools like Power BI, and then any examples of how this specifically helped improve outcomes on a project?
Sure. So I can start with the example. We had a utility company that we were working with, and we were brought in to kind of help them with their PMO and making sure that we had their projects, how they aligned against financials. And this company was essentially bringing in a new tool, and this new tool wasn't conducive. Like they already had it brought in. It wasn't conducive to how the reporting they wanted. It did everything they wanted perfectly from a day-to-day operational standpoint, but they wanted to see trending, and they wanted to see visualizations, and they wanted to bump up these numbers against, their financials that come out of SAP. And there was a lot of these nebulous systems that existed that we had to kind of finesse to get to work together. So using, my team basically went in and found out what they wanted to do, this archiving process. They wanted to say, this new tool that was coming in, we want to see, every day, make a copy of it and put it in a database. So we kind of created an archive process, gave it a unique identifier that would then be able to align with finances. And we were able to create them reporting that wouldn't have been possible before, because we basically took a system that didn't talk with the finances and then created like a middleman, like in the database. And then we were able to join those together, show it on a dashboard, and they were able to see how their projects were doing in real time with this new tool they brought in, but also throw the finances alongside it to see, like, are we on budget? Where do we stand? How did we look, 12 months ago? How do we think we're going to look 12 months from now? So it's really out of the box. There might not be something that works for everyone, but there are ways that you can get around that with other tools, like this archiving process. You can make stuff work for you where it might not out of the box. And it is a very viable solution. And in the end of the day, you have a much better product for it.
And Scott, I love this discussion on, interoperability, with whether it be like through an API or something custom that, you cook up. Because I mean, how many processes I'm sure you guys have seen where it is overly reliant on a manual process for a human to drag data from two applications and try to fuse them together through this kind of like convoluted process. But
Absolutely.
From this example you guys are giving, right? It's built once, it's done correctly, and then that real-time feedback, and there's always maintenance, but
Sure.
You guys have, it sounds like you have a system to give the business what it needs to essentially make decisions based on data real time.
Yep. It really comes down to, even if the tool doesn't say that it works that way, it's like, if there's data, we can make it work that way. Like, it's data is data. We can surface it any way you want. We can show it however you want. And we've done it before.
And, and Aaron, this one is, I've, personal experience with, and it's becoming a topic, I'd say that's getting hotter and hotter by the day, which is cybersecurity. So you start to centralize this data, right? And maybe there's, I guess, less, let's call it redundancy, right? Because if you've got data spread out all over the place, maybe it's a little bit tougher for some sort of attack or what have you to occur. But as you get it centralized all together in one place, maybe there's more of a problem. So could you just speak to how cybersecurity policies factor into the selection or implementation of data tools?
Absolutely. So, the whole process of data collection means that you do have connectivity, right? And systems are connected, they are sharing data. And so when you're compiling all that data in one location, then you are putting it at risk for access for potentially cyber attackers, right? And so when you're working with customers' IT departments, each individual entity that we work with, whether that be a utility or, like from a power side or water side, they have different interpretations on what that cybersecurity looks like from their IT perspective, right? And when we're implementing these data collection systems, we need to make sure that we're implementing secure cybersecurity practices and that they have procedures in place, like, standard things like passwords. But it's amazing how quickly those things go out the door when everybody's trying to embrace new technology and they just want to remove the barriers so they can get at the data, right? But that's another part of the journey of implementing new systems, is making sure that it's done properly and responsibly so that you're protecting that data and you're not, exposing your customers. I mean, that's one of the things that's a big issue for a lot of utilities, and they're trying to, be doing it right, but they're not cybersecurity experts. So we do have individuals who are experts within our walls at Stanley, and so we can help provide that guidance to do that, and working with their IT folks to make sure that our IT folks are comfortable with the solutions that Scott and my team are putting in place to collect that data.
And to bring it back to my favorite example that you guys brought up, some Excel file on somebody's C drive, right? As hard it is for you guys to find it, perhaps it's just as hard for some bad actor to find it, right?
Sure.
So then as you guys said, as you start to centralize, well, now it's all in one place. So it's easier for us to find as it is the bad actor. And Aaron, like that example of like, dropping security for convenience, right? It's like disabling two-factor authentication on your password manager because you got to know that you're gonna
Right.
freaking send in the 6-digit code every time, right?
Right.
And it sounds like to me there's just trade-offs that are made through this entire process, and that's also something you guys have to manage.
Right. And just even managing, the individual expectations of IT and understanding what their requirements are is critical. And not everybody speaks that, and can communicate and be that in a center point for information between all those different stakeholders.
Excellent. And so, we've talked about a few examples that you guys have given. Utility's been a big one. So Scott, I understand that, you worked on a project involving crash data analysis in the transportation sector. So could you tell us more about that specific project or projects, along with any of the goals, and then how did data visualization play a role in achieving those goals?
Sure. So this was actually a really cool one for my team because we had never touched, data crash data before, and it was, it's something tangible. Everyone drives a car. We like, if we go into a utility, it's wells and pumps and all that kind of stuff. Like my team it's just data to them. But crash data was something that we saw and we knew we could immediately make an impact with. So we worked with a couple different Department of Transportations at different states, and they would send us multi-years worth of crash data in a CSV file. And it was essentially every single crash that occurred within a certain area. And we took it and we kind of cleaned it up, made it all uniform because we were getting it from different sources. And once we surfaced it in the database, our team here, the traffic team here at Stanley, wanted to kind of make some inferences based on the data, but we didn't truly know what they were looking for. So we tried to find things that would pop out, like different outliers. A lot of the crashes might have occurred at a certain time of day, or maybe there was visibility issues with the sun or different ages. So what we did was we created a map and threw all of it, all the data points on a map, and then started pulling out different factors like sun beams, visibility, where were mortality rates, serious accidents and ages and etc. So once we got that up there, we were able to start kind of tweaking the different filters that we had, and we were seeing that like at certain intersections a lot of the crashes were caused by a certain factor. And the Department of Transportation, when they got this data, they were hoping to kind of get a starting point to essentially know where to do road work. Is there something we can do? Like, is there a stop sign that's being blocked by a tree and people just aren't seeing it until the last minute? Or, is the sun rays at this one time of day blinding people so they don't know that a red light has changed? A lot of stuff like that. Like, we weren't giving them what to do. We were giving them a starting point. And we were basically saying, these are the areas you should focus on when you're looking to do your road work changes, and build off of that. And from what we heard, it was a very successful project. We've been getting a lot of kudos back from it, and we've basically built something internally that we can repeat with other places. And each state's going to be different. They're going to have their different things they're looking for or whatnot. But by the work we've put in so far, we can kind of take that and kind of pick it up and drop it into other states and really help them out and show them that you don't need to start with no data. Like we can get you to a point where you can be successful without, having 1,000 different spreadsheets that are coming from multiple sources.
And to me, Scott, it sounds like you've got this range of, right? So no data or data that's not so useful. So the complete other end of the spectrum, which would be like, basically the data telling you what to do. But it sounds like you guys are just providing a way for the subject matter experts to easily and cleanly view the data and then use their expertise to decide what to do.
Right. So we are trying to give them as much as we can to make them successful so that they can see the data in every way possible, so that they can kind of use their knowledge, their background to say like, okay, well, I wonder what this is, or how does this relate to that? My team can get them the data and get them there, but we know that we're not experts in the data. We're just presenting it to the subject matter experts so that they can be successful moving forward.
And I love that example, Scott, because it's a great one of letting the business end up deciding what to do with the data, and even general, right? Like letting the business guide the technology instead of the other way around, which Aaron leads us into another Another good question for you. So, how can organizations balance budget limits while using KPIs to guide effective data infrastructure and visualization tool choices? Because again, it's about the business objectives
Yeah.
dictating what action you take with the data.
Right. Yeah. And so, Nick, when we have been talking about this whole data journey, each individual client that we've worked with has different budgetary capacities that they can apply to this journey and how they're progressing throughout the data visualization process. And so when we are talking with them about what their goals are and then where they're starting from with the audit, things like that, we can work with their budgetary constraints and say, okay, you can do this, this 3 months, here's your next project for the next 3 months, and this will cost, we'll estimate the cost to implement those different stages, and we can stage it out appropriately so that it kind of matches their budget capacities for implementing this strategy for the data visualization as collection, cybersecurity, all of these different topics that we've talked about that impact the stakeholders managing this data and collecting it and all those good, you know, practices that we want to put in place. But you have to kind of put it all under one program and then distribute the individual tasks so that you're not overwhelming the budget capacity of the individual client. And so that's kind of right sizing the project for the client, and what their capabilities are, what their goals are, and then we can give them a schedule and they can understand it's going to take this long to really get our goals put in place.
Which to me sounds like just, a combination of pretty much everything we've talked about today. Because without that experience and you guys working with, both clients similar to whatever one in particular you're working with, different ones, right? Your experiences internally or externally, all of that is just driving your expertise within Stanley's specific group to then help clients make these decisions.
Exactly.
And so, Scott, we'll wrap up with a final question for you. What final piece of advice can you give to AEC professionals who are just beginning their data journey on how to start using visualization tools in a simple, low friction way that delivers real value?
Sure. So I would say that a lot of people look at it as all or nothing. You're gonna go in, you need this Power BI suite that's gonna, cover every single data point within the company, and it's going to be a single point of truth. And that's daunting. I mean, we don't even have that here at Stanley. Like, you start at a point and kind of make your journey, and there's certain things that it's just not going to solve. So I would say, you don't need a Lamborghini when like a Nissan Sentra would be just fine for your organization. You want to start small. You want to start with tangible results. Find your power users at the company who kind of take what you do and run with it, because those are going to be the people that evangelize for you. They're the ones that are going to, in meetings talk about, hey, there's this group that I know that's been doing this really great work. I think they'll help you as well. And the word of mouth is key, kind of getting your work out there in the hands of people, solving issues for them, tangible issues, not just obtuse examples that you get out of a workbook. Just kind of like really like, you work with this data. Here's something I did with this data. I think it'll help you. And once you do that, it kind of just takes off. It's really, find your power users and then just, provide for them and going from there. Because before you know it, you're going to be flooded with requests because people are going to see what you do and they're going to know that this is really cool. Like, I did not know that this was something that could be done. And this can all be done with a free download. Like, you don't even need your high-end subscription services for some of the tools. Power BI is a free desktop version you could use, and you can just tinker with data that you throw in it via an Excel and then kind of grow from there. So it's really starting small and building and trying not to, put the carriage before the horse, if you will.
Yeah, and some of those best referrals I'm sure you guys get are from happy customers that just spread the gospel of what you guys do, which then keeps you guys pretty busy over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, Aaron and Scott, thank you both again so much for taking the time today. If the audience wants to connect with you, maybe follow up on some of the questions that you two answered today, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
So, I mean, I have probably my LinkedIn, I think, which will be provided, or my email address, which is readily available. We can put that out there as well. Always happy to talk data and always happy to talk about solutioning and what we can do for our clients.
Yeah, the same for me. LinkedIn worked great. My last name's pretty unique, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. And again, phone calls, I'm accessible via the Stanley website too. So there's all kinds of ways to reach out to us, and we can help anybody that's looking to start or continue this journey with data. It's a very exciting place to live and experience and work in.
Excellent. Aaron and Scott, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Please remember, you can find the show notes for this episode at aectechpodcast.com. There, you will find a summary of key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you the best in all of your engineering and technology endeavors. Thank you.